The phrase, first in war, first in peace, last in the American League, didn't quite describe the team anymore.
That phrase, the infamous phrase, first in war, first in peace, last in the American League, dates back to the 1900s. It was the wonderful cutting phrase of a columnist with the San Francisco Chronicle named Charles Dryden. And it does, sadly, fit much of the history of the Senators in town.
The expression first in war, first in peace, last in the American League was originally last in the National League. It's a vaudeville bit that went back to the 19th century when the original Washington Nationals were just awful.
If I hear one more time, you know, Washington, first in war, first in peace, last in the American League, ha ha ha, you know, it's every journalist's easiest cliche. Hello, they were good, you know, for about 10 years in the 20s. They almost won the pennant in 1945. World War II season, admittedly not that. But, you know, drop the cliches. Read my book. Read Hank Thomas's book about Walter Johnson.
They were respectable mainly because of Walter Johnson, who most call the greatest pitcher to ever play the game.
Walter Johnson is the greatest pitcher who ever lived. It should be called the Walter Johnson Award, not the Cy Young Award. Walter Johnson won 417 games with 110 shutouts. I mean, you think 110 shutouts, 25% of his victories were by shutout.
To give you some idea of the magnitude of his pitching career, he started 666 games. He completed 532 games. He won 417 of those games. And he pitched a shutout in 110 of them.
For 7 consecutive years, he won at least 25 games in the prime of his career. That's an absolutely staggering testament to his strength and his longevity as a pitcher.
I think his only rival probably would be Cy Young, perhaps Christy Matheson, but you know, they pitched totally in the dead ball era, and Walter Johnson went into the introduction of the so-called Lively ball in 1920, and he was successful for a number of years after that, even though he was in his 30s.
He came to Washington under unusual circumstances. He was not, ironically, a prodigy growing up in either Kansas or California. He was pitching in a very modest minor league, Class D league, the Southern Idaho League, pitching for a little town called WEISER in the Southern Idaho League. One day, an anonymous letter arrived at the old National Park where the Senators played in the 1900s. And it was from somebody in Idaho who had witnessed Johnson pitch a couple of games. And he said, "You won't believe how fast he is, and trust me, he's got pinpoint control, because if he didn't, there'd be dead bodies strewn all over the state of Idaho." That's how fast Walter Johnson was.
He was always afraid that he might hurt somebody or kill somebody even. He threw so fast, so hard, and now luckily he had great control. So it wasn't a problem that much, but there were days where he'd be a little wild, and it really bothered him, the idea that he might kill somebody with that fastball.
He was a remarkable athlete, a remarkable person, gentle, not what you'd call colorful in the Babe Ruth sense. He was kind to everyone.
He was also a gentle giant and just beloved in this community, and beloved by the great Shirley Povich, the legendary columnist for the Washington Post. Povich loved to tell the story of how Johnson got the nickname the Big Swede. If you look at photographs of Johnson, you see a man with very pronounced cheekbones and sort of classic Scandinavian features, plus the son at the end of the surname. Well, people concluded he was of Swedish descent, and they nicknamed him the Big Swede. The truth is, he didn't have a drop of Swedish blood in him, and Shirley Povich asked him one day why he never bothered to correct the mistaken nickname, the Big Swede, and he said, "Well, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I know a lot of Swedes who are nice people."
Most of America knew Johnson by another nickname. They called him the Big Train.
It had to do with a train, a locomotive in the time that he pitched was the fastest thing that there was, that anybody knew about. And it was, locomotives were big and strong, and that fit him. He was a very large, he was a big man for his time, broad, strong, and his forte was the fastball. He was the fastest pitcher then, and maybe the fastest pitcher that there's ever been, threw almost exclusively fastballs, which no other pitcher has ever been able to accomplish. So that's why the nickname stuck.